Okay guys, so welcome to the channels The Girls Blue for Cat VRC. This video is the second part of the session wherein we have been discussing an RC that was asked in the first lot of the exam CAT 2018, CAT 2018. And I've titled the RC as Can Happiness Shape Global Economies, 492 words, 5 questions, pretty standard. And yeah, so see, so for those of you who have already watched the first part, you know the way we go about this, we plan to go about this. Part one and part two will basically go through the questions, and then I'll present to you on a screen a vocabulary list. And finally, we'll do some analysis of the RC in terms of difficulty level and what further readings you can go for to get more exposure to this genre. Okay, so that's for the people who have already watched part one. Now there might be those of you who might not have watched part one so far, right? So what you guys can do is, well, you can find the link of the first part of this session in the description, and you can go and watch that, and then you can come back and solve these questions here. Or if you've already, what you can also do is you can just pause and read the RC here, and then start solving the questions right away. And then later on, maybe sometime later, you can look at the passage explanation. Okay, so that's about it. Again, those of you who are new, guys, these sessions, all of these sessions are basically part of a course titled an anthology of RCs for your reading comprehension preparation for the CAT. There's going to be 40 sessions here in this course, and this is one of them. All right. So with all of that meta information out of the way, let's start with the questions finally. Okay. Okay, guys. So let's start with the questions now. The first question says, according to the author, wearable technologies and social media are contributing most to, well, which of these, right? You're supposed to complete this sentence with one of these options here. Okay, so see, the question stem basically relates to contributions of wearable technologies and social media, right? Now, there are multiple point of references where these items have been mentioned, wearable technologies and social media, and let me just point out some of them to you. So there's the first point of reference, which says wearable technologies such as Fire offer data-driven advice on how to reduce stress, and this is basically, so basically they measure positive emotions so that they can be optimized, right? That's what they do here. So they contribute to measuring positive emotions for optimization. First point of reference. Another point of reference, uh, but this is now being pursued through the use of performance. This is being pursued, this basically being making work more pleasant and employees more productive. That is now being pursued through by the use of performance evaluating wearable technology again, right? And then he gives the specifics of all of this, and then he says that and the goal is to increase productivity, right? So again, the wearable technology here is in this PR also, you can see that it is contributing to improving or optimizing for increasing productivity, right? So again, similar. Finally, this last point of reference, which says that as the science grows more sophisticated and technologies become more intimate means he's indirectly he's talking about wearable technologies in a more generic sense, right? When this happens, a clear trend is emerging where happiness indicators are increasingly being used as a basis to transform or discipline individuals. So basically, again, optimizing for productivity by disciplining individuals basis the happiness indicators, right? So see guys, the idea here is quite, we can very easily derive the gist out of these three PORs so as to what wearable technologies and social media actually contribute to, and that is this, that wearable technologies and social media contribute to the measurement and monitoring of happiness indicators, which are in turn optimized for productivity by disciplining people to be more happy. Okay, so that's the idea. That's the idea that we've derived from here. Now, given that we have derived the actual idea from the passage, now we can look at each of these options in light of this idea and decide whether they are correct or not. Okay, so let's start with the first option. It says making individuals, that these wearable technologies and social media contribute most to making individuals aware of stress in their lives. Okay, now as part of the process where these technologies and social media help measure and monitor happiness indicators and then so on and so forth, as part of this process, in the process it might happen that individuals may become aware of the stress in their lives because they are present in the process, right? So of course, but is that the core point? Is that the core point that the author is trying to convey? Convey in terms of what they actually, the core point that they contribute to? No, the core point is, guys, that how the measurement, and monitoring and optimization pressures the individuals to become disciplined, disciplines them to become happy so as to optimize for more productivity. And wearable technologies and social media basically contribute to that core point. In the process, it may happen that the individuals become aware of stress in their lives. That's true, but that's not the core point here that these technologies are contributing to. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's suppose I say that rash driving contributes to fatal accidents, right? Rash driving contributes to fatal accidents. Now, my core point here is fatal accidents, right? Contribution to fatal accident, contribution of rash driving to fatal accidents. Now, in the process of rash driving, what might happen is that you might scratch your car, maybe damage some part of your car, or at the same time, you might even learn a little bit how to handle speed. Okay, but was that the core point I was trying to make when I made the statement that rash driving uh, generally leads to or contributes to fatal accidents? No. Those items or those processes are just intermediate processes that happen to be part of the whole causal chain, right? So the core point still remains that rash driving leads to fatal accidents. Similarly, in this case, wearable technologies and social media lead to um pressured disciplining of individuals to be happy so as to optimize for project productivity. And in the process, the individuals might become aware of the stress in their lives, but that's not the point, right? And hence we can eliminate this option quite easily. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Second option, it says that according to the author, wearable technologies and social media are contributing most to happiness as a personal project. Now, many learners may have fallen for this, but this option is incorrect on two accounts. First, if we read the stem and the option subsequently one by one, right, like a complete sentence. Let me do it now. According to the author, wearable technologies and social media are contributing most to happiness as a personal project. If I write most contributing most to happiness as a personal project, this seems to convey an absolutely tangent meaning, a meaning that is nowhere implied or explicitly given provided by the author. It basically seems to convey that wearable technologies and social media contribute most to happiness, like they directly contribute to happiness, right? That's not what the author says anywhere as a personal project, right? A better, like suppose the option had been rendering happiness as a personal project. In that case, we could have still considered it, because then it would seem more in line with what the author says in the passage. Like let's read it with rendering. Wearable technologies and social media are contributing most to rendering happiness as a personal project for individuals. Now it seems to be in line. Okay, so the first problem is it's not phrase proper. It does not, when you read these together, it gives you it delivers a totally absolutely tangent idea, totally distorted idea. Now the second problem is, let's say, even if we allow for the first problem to be okay, like let's just assume, okay, maybe there was a word rendering here. There is still a second problem, and which is that happiness as a personal project, guys, is actually a result of this optimization and this disciplining. Okay, individuals taking up happiness as a personal project is basically something that happens as a result of this pressured optimization. When employees are pressured into optimizing for productivity by forcing them to be happy, then they have to take up happiness as a personal project, right? So it is not, it is not happiness as a personal project is not something that wearable technologies and social media directly contribute to. It's an indirect result, right? So that's the second reason, second account on which this option is incorrect. Let's move on to the next one. I'll just erase this part so that there's no confusion. Third option, wearable technologies and social media are contributing most to depression as a thing of past. So guys, in this case, you don't even need to match the option with the question stem. Like, because the option is factually incorrect just in the context of the passage itself, right? You don't even have to go and check with the question stem. Like depression as a thing of the past, irrespective of what the question stem may have been, depression as a thing of the past is definitely something that the author does not mention here. The author has talked about depression here, that's true, but what he has said is that depression since the 1970s came to be viewed as a cognitive or neurological defect, as opposed to a consequence of circumstances. So basically, he's just saying that the cause of depression, okay, the perception about the cause of depression has changed. He doesn't say that depression does not exist anymore, that it has become a thing of the past, right? So this is definitely incorrect according to the passage. So you can eliminate this as well. Finally, the last option, which says that wearable technologies and social media are contributing most to disciplining individuals to be happy. This is absolutely true, because this option does match with what the passage says, which we have derived here, that wearable technologies and social media do contribute to directly optimizing measuring and monitoring happiness indicators, which in turn help optimize for productivity by forcing people or disciplining people or individuals to be happy, right? So that's correct. So that's the reason why this option will be correct, and we'll go for this. Okay. All right. So we're done with the first question. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. So question number 2. In the author's opinion, the shift in thinking in the 1970s, well, and then you were supposed to complete the sentence using one of these 4 options, right? Okay. Now, the question is about the shift in thinking in the 1970s, and there is only one part in the passage where the author has made this reference. Okay, and that is the part where the author talks about how since the 1970s depression came to be viewed as a cognitive or neurological defect as opposed to being a consequence of circumstances. So basically, the view with respect to depression, with respect to the causal factors of depression since the 1970s had changed. That's what the author has talked about here in the point of reference. With that in mind, let's check each option one by one. The first option says the shift in thinking in the 1970s introduced greater stress into people's lives as they were expected to be responsible for their own happiness. This is actually on point, guys. See, if we go back to the POR, just look at this point. Look at the next sentence. All of this simply escalates the sense of responsibility each of us feels for our feelings, right? What of this? All of this refers to happiness becoming a personal project. That point plus how the view with respect to depression's causal factors have changed in the 1970s. So yes, so that as well, the shift in thinking, since the 1970s has actually the author does say that it has escalated the sense of responsibility that each of us feels for our own feelings, and that's exactly what option A says in a paraphrased manner, right? It introduced the shift in thinking in 1970s introduced greater stress into people's lives as they were expected to be responsible for their own happiness, right? So this can be an answer, and I'm going to mark this as a capital S here. Strong selection. Let's look at the rest of the options now. Second option says that shift in thinking in the 1970s reflected the emergence of neuroscience as the authority on human emotions. Now, guys, no aspect of this option, be it the emergence of neuroscience or be it authority on human emotions, neuroscience becoming an authority of human emotions, none of these aspects have been mentioned anywhere in the passage. Okay, have they've been neither have they been mentioned directly explicitly, or neither have or not have they been implied anywhere in the passage. So this is clearly a case of error of inclusion and can be eliminated with a capital E here. It's a case of EOI. I'm going to write option B here with EOI. Okay, so let's move on to the next option, which says people put in touch the shift in thinking in the 1970s put people in touch with their own feelings rather than depending on psychologists. Now again, guys, the thing is this dichotomy, okay, where of people being getting in touch with their own feelings as opposed to depending or not depending on psychologists. This discussion has not been had anywhere in the passage. Nowhere in the passage does the author talk about this dichotomy, this difference. Okay, that people started becoming in touch with their own feelings than and earlier they used to be dependent on psychologists. Nowhere does this find a mention, and nor has it been implied anywhere in the passage. So again, this again becomes right in touch with their feelings and dependence on psychology. Nothing has been mentioned of the sort in the passage. So again, it becomes a case of and EOI. So again, I'll write option C as well here. C is also a case of EOI, and we can eliminate this with a capital E. Okay, let's come to the next option. Uh, the shift in thinking in the 1970s was a welcome change from the earlier view that depression could be cured by changing circumstances. Uh, the earlier view can probably be inferred or interpreted, can be inferred that okay, it may have been that depression can be cured by changing circumstances, although you can't really say that. But moreover, we don't really need to go that far in the option. Just the first few words make a very strong case for eliminating this option, because they say that was a welcome change. The shift in thinking was a welcome change. Who has The author has not mentioned anywhere that it was a welcome change. Rather, the author seems to be of the opinion that this change in perspective with respect to the causal factors of depression actually did more harm by increasing the sense of responsibility that each of us felt, that the individuals felt for their feelings, right? So this is actually factually incorrect. I'll put this option against factual error. Option D will be a factual error and will be eliminated with a capital E. All right, guys. So let's start with the third question. The question then is as follows. The author's view would be undermined by which of the following research findings? Undermined means weakened. So we are essentially required to figure out which of the following options, if true, will weaken the author's point of view, right, or the author's argument. So, guys, this is an application question, application category question, and in such questions, especially when you are required to either select an option that weakens the author's view or strengthens the author's view, it's always advisable to first formulate what the author's point of view is, right? To first actually be clear about what the author's point of view is. Once you have that clear, once you have that defined, then it will be quite easy for you to check which of the options might or might not strengthen or weaken the. In this case, we are going to look for the option that weaken the author's point of view. Okay, so that's what we'll start with. So see, in this passage, the author's point of view can be summarized as follows. I'll write it here, down here for you. He basically says that globally there is a trend. Globally, there is a trend towards measuring, monitoring, and optimizing. Globally, there's a trend towards measurement, monitoring, and optimization of positive emotions. Okay, and so let's refer to this by using a graph. So globally, there is a trend towards, let's say this represents a trend. Okay, globally there is a trend towards measurement, monitoring, and optimization of positive emotions. And his point of view doesn't end there. He also says that this trend by itself is something that is detrimental for the well-being of individuals. Okay, it's detrimental for the well-being of individuals. This is the author's point of view. Okay, now every option that we assess now from this point onwards will be assessed in the backdrop of this point of view. This is your author's POV. Okay, all right, so let's look at the go to the options now. The first option says stakeholders globally are moving away from collecting data on the well-being of individuals. The author, according to the author, there is a trend where globally there is a trend towards measurement, monitoring, and optimization of positive emotions. This option actually goes against the first part, right? The measurement part, because it says that stakeholders globally are moving away from collecting data, right? So this is totally the contrary, completely contrary to what the author has said, at least in the first part of the author's point of view is that there is a trend towards measurement and monitoring, and this option says that no, they are moving away from collecting data on the well-being of individuals. So yes, this can definitely undermine the uh, author's POV. So this will mark this as a capital S scenario. This can be a correct answer. We will confirm that only after we have gone through through the other options. Okay, so let's look at the second option. It says there's a definitive move towards the adoption of wearable technology that taps into emotions. See, guys, the option only says that there is a definitive move towards adoption of wearable technology. It doesn't tell you that what this definitive move is driven by. Whether it is a move that is driven by people adopting these technology because of their own personal reasons, of their own accord, without getting manipulated for productivity or anything, or is it that they have fallen prey to the happiness becoming a personal project idea? In the first case, it can undermine the author's argument, right? It can undermine the author's argument. In the second case, if they're actually, if the definitive move is because they have fallen prey to the happiness becoming their personal project idea, in that case, this will in fact strengthen the argument, and we are not looking for an option that strengthens the argument. And there is no way to tell that what is the reason what is the cause behind this definite move? Are they moving towards adoption because of their own accord, because they like by themselves want to, or is it because of the corporate or of this trend that is going on of optimization of resources, right? So we don't know that, and hence we cannot say that this will necessarily weaken the or undermine the author's view, and hence we can eliminate this option. This can be eliminated because we are not sure about whether it will weaken or strengthen. In one case, if we make one assumption for the cause, it will strengthen. If we make another assumption, it weakens. Okay, so it won't necessarily undermine. So we can eliminate this. Let's come to the next option. A proliferation of gems that are collecting data on customer well-being. Okay. Now, although this option has altered the idea a little bit, altered the idea of employee monitoring to customer monitoring, right? The passage more or less talks about the positive emotions being monitored and optimized for the employees or for the people who are working in the workplace, right? This has changed the idea to customer monitoring. So that's fair. That's fair. So it seems to, well, even after doing that, it won't really undermine the author's point of view, because, well, just because gens are collecting data on customer well-being, that does not mean that what the author has said, that there is a trend going towards measuring, monitoring, and optimization of resources at the workplace, is not true, right? The gems collecting data does not make the author's argument untrue, and hence this at max this becomes a case where just a tangent point has been made. It will definitely not undermine the author's position. Okay, so we can eliminate this as well here. Let's come to the the last option. It says individuals worldwide are utilizing technologies to monitor and increase their well-being. Okay, so see, guys, again, even with option D, it just tells you that individuals worldwide are using these technologies to monitor and increase their well-being. Now, whether this usage is something that the individuals have taken up by their own accord, is something that they have taken up by their own accord, like without being forced or without there being any pressure at all, or whether they have again fallen prey to the happiness being a personal project problem, right? Where because they've fallen prey to the manipulation techniques and the optimization concerns that the author has expressed. It's not very clear. We don't know why individuals worldwide are utilizing technologies to monitor and increase their well-being for, right? We don't know the causal factor behind this. If the causal factor is, well, their own personal choice, because they are being forced or pressured, or they are feeling some sort of pressure at the workplace, not because of that, but just okay, they just happen to it of their own accord. In that case, it can undermine, because then it will say, no, it is not. It's something that the individuals are doing by themselves. They're not being forced. They're not being manipulated or pressured, etc. Right? But we don't know that. It might as well be that the individuals are utilizing this as after having fallen prey to the happiness becoming a personal project idea, right? Where they are being manipulated and pressured, and their emotions are being optimized for better productivity. And the option is not clear on which one of these two is the cause. So because we're not clear on that, we can't necessarily say that this will undermine the author's point of view. Okay, and hence even this option can be eliminated. Okay, so your correct answer here will be option A, which definitely undermines the author's point of view. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Okay, guys, so the fourth question says that From the passage, we can infer that the author would like economists to, and then you're supposed to select one of these options to complete the sentence. Okay, so again, guys, see, we have an application question here. Okay, this belongs to the category of questions where you're required to guess at what might logically follow the passage, right? Now, the author has not really, we have to infer this, right? This is not something that the author has given in the passage that what he would like the economist to. So you're basically supposed to guess at what might logically follow the passage. Now, be that in terms of further information, or be it in terms of further data, or maybe let's say in terms of what steps you would want to be taken to address some issue or concern. Okay, so these are questions where you're basically supposed to guess at the logical continuation of the passage in terms of further info, data that the author might require, or steps that he might want to have taken to address some issue. Now, uh, see, there is a very simple framework that you can follow to select or eliminate options for such questions. Okay, and see, the correct option, the option that will be correct, that will fit with the question stem, will be one which either wherein the option either falls in the purview of something that the author is concerned about. It should be something that concerns the author, or it has to be something that has to be of substantial interest to the author such that he would want to have it explored, right? So it should, the correct option will fall in either one of these two categories. It has to be either of concern to the author, or either it has to be of something that the author has shown interest in. Okay, so okay, so exactly. So what we'll do here is we'll assess each and every option in the backdrop of these two factors. The correct option should match at least one of these two, and the incorrect will not match any of these. Okay, so let's start with the first option. The first option says that we can infer that the author would like economists to measure the effectiveness of Facebook and social media advertising. Now, guys, the thing is, so far as the effectiveness of Facebook and social media is neither something that the author is concerned about, nor is something that he is interested in. Okay, now that is not to say that he has not mentioned this. In fact, he has in fact mentioned it. He basically says here that Facebook has demonstrated. Look at this point of reference, has demonstrated that it could influence our emotions, etc., etc. So but that's not his concern, or that's not his interest. He's basically just taken, he already accepts that yes, Facebook is effective, social media is effective. So this is not something that should logically follow the passage, something that is already established, right? So it's not neither a concern nor an interest, and hence can be eliminated. He would not be interested in asking the economist to do this. Okay, let's come to the next option. It says we can infer that the author would like economists to work closely with neuroscientists to understand human behavior. Again, this option also has the same problem. See, guys, the author's concern is how the measurement, monitoring, and the optimization of positive emotions can affect that can detrimentally affect people. That's what his concern is. His concern is not he's not really interested in human behavior per se, right? And that's the reason why, because of human behavior and because of this content, this option becomes something that is neither a concern of the author, nor is something that the author is directly interested in, and hence he would not be, he is very unlikely to suggest the economist to work closely with neuroscientists to understand human behavior. It's not very it's not likely at all. Okay, let's move on to the next option then. Option C. It says we can infer that the author would like economists to incorporate psychological findings into their research cautiously. Okay, so this is an interesting one, and it's not a very straightforward one. So I'll just explain this in slight detail here. So, guys, see, in the passage, the author has essentially demonstrated, in the whole passage, essentially demonstrated how a change in the perspective of economists, okay, with respect to the utility of psychology. So, you see, this passage says most of the 20th century they ignored psychology, and now there is a certain emphasis on how happiness can shape global economies, right? So, basically in the passage, the author has demonstrated that how a slight change in the perspective of economists with respect to psychology is probably going to lead to negative repercussions in terms of leading to detrimental effects on individuals, right? Uh, and hence, actions. From this demonstration, we can infer that actions of economists, actions of economists, so far as vis-a-vis psychological findings, vis-a-vis psychological findings, will definitely be of concern to the author, right? When it comes to psychological findings, the psychological findings of economists, which they might or might not incorporate in their research, that will definitely be of concern, because he has already demonstrated this year that even a slight change in perspective of this economist with respect to psychology has led to, potentially lead to such negative repercussions, right? So it is definitely something that concerns the author, and hence it is quite likely to be the answer. Okay, smallest, definitely a smaller scenario, at least a weak selection if not strong. Okay, so yes, so the author might like the economist to incorporate psychological findings into their research cautiously. Coming to the last option, it says we can infer that the author would like economists to correlate measurements of happiness with economic indicators. Now, guys, throughout the passage, the author has consistently expressed concerns with the measurement, monitoring, and optimization of positive emotions. So it is highly unlikely that the author would suggest that economists should to correlate. He would want the economists to correlate measurements of happiness with economic indicators. This is completely antithetical to what the concern of the author is. It is not at all. It is in fact going in the opposite direction of the concern, right? So again, neither concern nor interest, and in fact goes in the opposite direction of the concern. So definitely something that you can very easily eliminate from as an option. Okay, so your correct answer, as we can see here, will be option C. Okay, all right. So let's move on to the next question then. Okay, guys, so let's start with the fifth question. It says, according to the author, Dubai. So the stem basically relates to Dubai, which has just one point of reference, which is, I think, here. Cities such as Dubai, which has pledged to become the happiest city in the world, dream of ever more elaborate and intrusive ways of collecting data on well-being, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we'll come to the complete POR if required while reading the options. So that's the only POR so far as Dubai is concerned. Okay, so let's start with the options then. The first option says, according to the author, Dubai is on its way to becoming one of the world's happiest cities. Now, there is a mention of such an expression such as world's happiest city that you can see here. Yes, happiest city in the world, right? So there is a mention, there's a mention of this kind of an expression here. But is this something that is according to the author? Is this something that the author believes? No, this is not something that the author believes, right? He's just reported that, the author has simply reported that cities such as Dubai, which has pledged to become the happiest city in the world, dream of ever more elaborate ways. He nowhere himself pledges allegiance to this point of view, right? He nowhere says that he also himself believes that yes, Dubai is going to become the happiest city. In fact, he's rather made arguments against these surveillance practices of Dubai, right? So definitely not. This is clearly an incorrect option. This is not what the author believes, and hence can be eliminated with a capital E. Let's come to the next option then. According to the author, Dubai is on its way to becoming one of the according to the author, Dubai develops sophisticated technologies to monitor its inhabitants' state of mind. That's right. That's absolutely true. The point of reference clearly exemplifies this idea, right? This point. Let's just read this. See, has pledged to become the happiest city in the world. These cities dream of ever more elaborate and intrusive ways of collecting data on well-being, to the point where there is now talk of CCTV cameras to monitor facial expressions in public spaces. See, this is the exemplification of this idea, developing sophisticated technologies to monitor its inhabitants' states of mind. So yes, talk of using CCTV cameras to monitor facial expressions in public spaces. So this is totally called for, and this can be the answer. So we're going to mark this as a option that we are selecting, but we'll also go through the other options before we finally zero in on option B as the answer. Option C. According to the authors, Dubai incentivizes companies that prioritize worker welfare. Now, guys, workers have been talked about in the passage, employees have been talked about, their well-being has been talked about, Dubai has been talked about in the passage. But Dubai incentivizing companies that prioritize worker welfare has not been talked about in the passage anywhere. Okay, so clearly this will be an error of inclusion. Okay, we can eliminate this as an error of inclusion. Option C will be an error of inclusion. Let's come to the next option. According to the author, Dubai collaborates with Facebook to selectively influence its inhabitants' moods. Now, once again, Dubai has been talked about, Facebook has been talked about, but nowhere, and in fact, they have both been talked about in the same paragraph. But but that does not mean that they'll be collaborating unless it explicitly mentions that. And the paragraph does not mention that Dubai will be collaborating with Facebook or does collaborate with Facebook to selectively influence its inhabitants' mood. So the paragraph does not see that. This collaboration point is totally, it's a gross distortion. Okay, I'll write D here, and this can also be eliminated with a capital E. Okay, and now we from this it's quite clear that the correct answer here will be option B. Okay, so we are done with the questions, and let's move on to the next part. That will be the vocabulary list for the passage. All right, guys. So let's come to the vocabulary list. Now, see on the left side again you have the passage, and there are certain words that have been highlighted here. And on the right side, the meanings and more importantly, the contextual meanings of these words have been provided here. Okay, so I'm not going to go through each and every word here because we're anyways going to have a separate vocabulary course, so quite a comprehensive and extensive vocabulary course. So I won't be reading each and every word and meaning here. But what you can do is you can check the word here, you can check the context of the word here, and then you can uh, go through the meaning of those words in the same on the slide, right? So basically, you'll have to pause the video and do that. All right. So yes. So with that, I'll move on to the analysis and readings part. Okay, guys. So let's start with the analysis and readings section. So far as the analysis is concerned, the first parameter is genre. The genre of this passage was economics and management, and if you found the ideas discussed here to be challenging, or if you found yourself to be a little not so comfortable with the terminology here, you'll definitely benefit from reading some more articles from the same genre. Second parameter, readability. As per a variant of the Fleshkin category level scale, this passage, the difficulty level of this passage, not the RC note. I'm just talking about the passage, the readability of the passage here. RC, the difficulty level of the RC involves the difficulty level of the passage as well as the difficulty level of the questions. Okay, readability is just about the passage. Would be rated as 6.72 on a scale of 10. Okay, which translates to moderate, slightly above moderate. Okay, so just the readability. The questions in turn, the passage was moderate plus, but the questions in turn were like I think reasonably difficult. Okay, so they will be considered as difficult, the questions. Next, passage length 492 words, 98.4 words per question. That's the CAT standard, usually 100 words per question, plus minus 15 to 20%. Quite standard. Idle time for solving this RC would have been 8 to 9 minutes. You should have been able to solve the RC within a period of 9 minutes in an idle scenario, like when you're appearing for CAT. Okay, when you're practicing, obviously it will take more time, so you have to still develop the skill to comprehend the passage and eliminate options and answer questions. But the target time should be 9 minutes. 3 to 3.5 minutes for passage and 6 to 6.5 minutes for the questions. Finally, suggested readings based on this passage. There are two articles that I've mentioned that I'm mentioning here. The first one is Happiness is an Important Indicator of Societal Progress by Bina Agarwal, source New York Times. The link has been provided in the description. As a second article, Pursue Happiness but in Moderation, uh, by another author in the New York Times, from the same source, New York Times. Link for this as well has been provided in the description. Okay. In fact, these articles and the articles from which your passage has been taken are part of the same debate on the New York Times page, so you can find that in the description. Okay. All right. So we're done with the analysis and readings part. Okay, guys. So the course map, I'll just take you through very briefly. This RC that we discussed here was the second RC of the first passage. The first one has already been discussed, and every week we'll be solving 5 RCs like this, right? So, and yeah, so you can follow the channel to keep solving these RCs and improving your skills so far as reading comprehension for CAD is concerned. And finally, the last slide. For people who have not watched the first session, still, please, you can click here on this card and go and watch the first session. And again, guys, these sessions are part of the course. They fall under the umbrella of the course, an anthology of RCs, reading comprehension for the cat, and which again, like, is brought to you by Sluggers Blue for Cat VRC. That's the channel. Okay, so that's about it, guys. Thanks, done. I hope you found the videos the session useful, and let me know in the comments if there is any kind of feedback. Okay, thank you so much. Goodbye.